Get ready to travel back in time to witness one of the most brutal and gruesome battles in history, Stalingrad 1942-43. This battle marked a turning point in World War II and brought the German army to its knees. For months, both sides fought with all their might, resulting in millions of lives lost. But in this video, we'll take a deep dive into the tactics used, the conditions in which the soldiers fought, and the impact that it had on the war. So buckle up and get ready to witness the true horror of war as we explore the bloodiest battle of the 20th century. What war was this? World War I or World War II? What countries fought in Stalingrad? World War II was a global conflict that lasted from 1939 to 1945 and involved the majority of the world's nations, including all of the great powers. The fight went down on two main stages. One was in Europe, where Germany and their crew were duking it out against the Allies, and the other would be in the Pacific, where Japan was battling against the Allies. The Eastern Front was a theater of the European War that saw intense fighting between Germany, its allies, and the Soviet Union. The Eastern Front was the largest and bloodiest theater of war, and it's estimated that around 27 million Soviet citizens died during the conflict, which is a lot of bodies. One of the most crucial, and notably the bloodiest battles of the Eastern Front was the Battle of Stalingrad. This fight would take place in and around the city of Stalingrad, which was an important place because it was a major industrial hub and located right on the Volga River. Both the Germans and the Soviets knew that whoever came out on top in this battle would have a huge advantage in the overall war. It was really intense and an important moment of World War II's story. Who started it, the Germans or the Soviets? The Battle of Stalingrad began in August of 1942, when the Germans launched a huge assault on the city. They came at Stalingrad from all sides with infantry, tanks, and artillery, and they were making progress, taking over key buildings and strategic positions. But the Soviets were not going to give up without a fight. They fought back with everything they had, using the streets, buildings, and even the sewers as defensive positions. The fighting was intense and brutal, with both sides taking heavy casualties. The Germans had a tough time maneuvering tanks and artillery throughout the narrow streets, and the Soviet snipers, along with ambushes, made things even more difficult for them. The Soviets, on the other hand, were also dealing with a well-equipped and well-trained German army that had superior firepower and mobility. Despite all of the challenges, both sides fought hard, with the outcome of the battle hanging in the balance. November 1942, the turning point of the Battle of Stalingrad. It would be November of 1942, and the Battle of Stalingrad was in full swing. The German forces were in control of most of the city, and it seemed as though they were going to win the battle. But then, the Soviet Union launched a massive counterattack, led by General Georgy Zhukov. This would become the turning point of the conflict, which was marked by several factors and activities. Winter weather. The winter weather created for harsh conditions with the Battle of Stalingrad. The temperatures fell below freezing, and nobody could fight effectively. The Germans had it especially rough because they were not ready for the cold like the Soviet troops were. The Germans would suffer major losses from circumstances like frostbite and hypothermia. Meanwhile, the Soviets were all geared up for the cold and even managed to catch the Germans off guard with a sneak attack. Supply lines. The importance of supply lines became apparent during the battle's turning point. The Germans were completely cut off from their supplies, so they barely had any food, fuel, or ammunition. This would lead to the soldiers becoming very hungry and tired, while the Soviet Union was able to keep on bringing in supplies to their troops. It also meant that the Soviets could keep fighting back and eventually wore the German army down. Ukrainian soldiers and commanders, the unsung heroes of the battle. The contributions of Ukrainian soldiers and commanders would also play a significant role in the victory. Despite being under Nazi occupation at the time, Ukrainian soldiers made up a substantial portion of the Red Army's troops fighting on the Stalingrad front. They held high command positions and led various armies, which included the Soviets' 1st Guards Army and the 5th Tank Army, which played a vital role in the defeat of the Germans. Ukrainian soldiers demonstrated remarkable bravery and selflessness during the battle. Health instructor Gulia Koroleva sacrificed her life to save 50 wounded soldiers and commanders. Captain Mykola Hertsenko, Senior Lieutenant Fedir Elchenko, and Lieutenant Oleski Mazurko played a critical role in the capture of General Field Marshal Frederic Paulos, one of the developers of the Barbarossa Plan. Ukrainian pilots also made significant contributions to the victory at Stalingrad. 2 future two-time heroes of the Soviet Union, Ivan Stepanenko and Ahmet Khan Sultan, fought near Stalingrad as ace pilots. And for his participation in the battle, the Tu-4 bomber pilot Petro Skrabyuk was awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union. The End Game. As the battle for Stalingrad was coming to an end, news of the Soviet troops' impending victory reached both Moscow and Berlin. Stalin was over the moon upon hearing the news, while Hitler was boiling with anger upon learning about the capture of troops whom he had recently promoted. The report reached the Führer in his wolf's lair at the headquarters. He then went on a tirade, saying how could he not shoot himself? The only faint-hearted weakling nullified the valor of heroism and an entire army. Paulus could find eternity, immortalize his name for the German people, but instead preferred a date with Moscow. Ultimately, the Soviet Union emerged triumphant from the Battle of Stalingrad, dealing a massive blow to the German war effort and turning the tide of World War II on the Eastern Front. The battle, one of the bloodiest in human history, stands as a testament to the bravery and perseverance of its soldiers, who both fought and died on both sides. If this video piqued your interest, then please continue watching by clicking the video on your screen to find out more interesting facts about the history of our world.